Why do you always choose the harder path? Why, when you're on the verge of achieving something important, does an inner voice whisper that you don't deserve it? Why, in the most crucial moments, do you become your own worst enemy? Imagine a man who spent his entire life running from mirrors, not because he was vain, but because every time he looked, he saw something that terrified him. Not his physical appearance, but a shadow behind his eyes. A dark presence that seemed to know all his most shameful secrets, all his most primitive impulses. One day, tired of this constant escape, he decided to stand in front of the mirror and face this shadow once and for all. What he discovered changed not only his life, but revolutionized our understanding of the human mind. That man was Carl Jung, and what he found in that reflection was something we all carry, but few have the courage to face. Today, you will discover why Jung said that what you resist persists, and how this resistance is sabotaging your life in ways you can't even imagine. By the end of this video, you will not only understand the revolutionary concept of the shadow, but you will have a practical map to integrate this rejected part of yourself. And finally, stop self-sabotaging. If you feel it's time to stop being a hostage to your own destructive patterns and want to discover the strength that great thinkers can offer you, know that this channel is your refuge. Subscribe now and activate notifications, because the journey we begin today is just the first step. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to point out the flaws in others? How we can identify almost instantly when someone is being hypocritical, aggressive, or fake? It's astonishing, our ability to see in others what bothers us so deeply. But here's the point Jung discovered. This ease is no coincidence. It's a mechanism. Every human being possesses what Jung called the shadow, a part of the personality that contains everything we deny, repress, or consider unacceptable in ourselves. Think about the person who irritates you the most. It could be that coworker who thinks they're better than everyone, or that person on social media who's always boasting. The irritation you feel isn't just about them. It's about a part of you that you don't want to admit exists. Jung explained it simply. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you point a finger at someone, 3 fingers point back at you. And in those 3 fingers lies your shadow. The shadow isn't necessarily something evil. It is simply everything you have decided, consciously or unconsciously, is not you. If you see yourself as an always positive person, your shadow carries all your repressed anger. If you pride yourself on being humble, your shadow holds all the impulses of vanity you deny. The problem begins when this shadow, instead of being integrated, starts controlling your life from behind the scenes. It manifests in self-sabotage, in the toxic relationships you choose, in the opportunities you inexplicably let slip away. Why do I always do this to myself? How many times have you asked yourself that question? Jung had the answer, and it's directly linked to the formation of our shadow. From childhood, you learned that certain parts of you were unacceptable. Maybe you were punished for showing anger, so you learned to repress that feeling. Maybe you were criticized for being selfish when you expressed your needs, so you developed the pattern of always putting others first. These rejected parts don't disappear. They go into the shadow, and from there they operate as an internal saboteur. Jung observed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Let's be practical. Do you know someone who always complains they have no luck in relationships? Who always ends up with people who don't value them? Jung would say that this person likely has aspects related to their own self-worth in their shadow. Unconsciously, they choose partners who confirm their hidden belief that they don't deserve love, or think of the person who always sabotages their own success. They're about to get a promotion and make a silly mistake. They're close to finishing an important project and procrastinate until the last minute. Jung would explain this as the shadow at work, a part of the person that doesn't feel worthy of success, interfering at crucial moments. Self-sabotage is not a lack of willpower or laziness. It is the shadow trying to maintain the status quo, because the unknown, even if positive, represents a threat to the self you have constructed. The shadow is a master of disguise. In the modern world, it adapts perfectly to our contemporary neuroses. Let's unmask some of its most common manifestations. The paralyzed perfectionist. This person holds a deep fear of being mediocre or inadequate in their shadow. So, they create impossible standards of perfection as a way to avoid trying anything at all. After all, if you don't try, you can't fail, right? Jung would say, this person is projecting onto perfection an escape from their essentially human vulnerability. The eternal victim. There's always someone or something to blame for their problems. Jung observed that when we constantly project responsibility onto others, we are avoiding facing our own capacity for choice and change. This person's shadow carries the personal power they refuse to acknowledge. The compulsive altruist, the person who can never say no, who sacrifices for others to the point of exhaustion. Jung would identify in this person's shadow a deep need for recognition and validation, disguised as generosity. The selfishness they so reject in others is, in fact, a legitimate need to care for themselves. The defensive cynic, the one who criticizes everything and everyone, who always sees the negative side of situations. Jung would say this person has an immense vulnerability and a deep need for hope and connection in their shadow. Cynicism is the armor that protects a heart that has been hurt too much. The genius of Jung is that he didn't see these manifestations as character flaws, but as precious indicators of what needs to be integrated. Each symptom of the shadow is, in fact, a treasure map, pointing to rejected aspects of ourselves that, once integrated, can become our greatest strengths. Jung made a discovery that would forever change our understanding of human relationships. We don't see people as they are. We see people as we are. Specifically, we project onto them aspects of our own shadow. Think about the last time you had a very intense reaction to someone. I'm not talking about a simple annoyance, but that disproportionate anger, that indignation that seemed to come from the depths of your soul. Jung would say that this person was serving as a screen for the projection of your shadow. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you consider yourself a very honest and upright person. Suddenly, you meet someone you perceive as fake or manipulative. Your reaction to this person is visceral. You simply cannot tolerate them. Jung would explain that this person may be carrying aspects of your own capacity for manipulation that you've never admitted to having. We all have the capacity to manipulate. It's a basic survival skill. But if you've built your identity around total honesty, your shadow will carry all the moments you were strategic, calculating, or less than completely transparent. The problem with projection is that it keeps us trapped in destructive relational patterns. Jung observed that what we resist persists. When we project our shadow onto others, we continue to attract people who manifest these qualities, creating a seemingly endless cycle. But Jung also discovered something liberating. The moment you recognize a projection, it loses its power over you. When you can say, "This irritation I feel with this person is showing me something about myself," you take the first step toward reclaiming the energy that was being drained by the projection. Projection isn't just a problem. It is also a tool for self-discovery. Jung said that our most difficult relationships are often our greatest teachers because they force us to confront aspects of ourselves we'd rather ignore. Jung was not only interested in the individual shadow. He realized that groups, societies, and even entire nations have collective shadows. And understanding this is crucial to understanding the polarized world we live in today. Observe any political discussion on social media. See how each side completely demonizes the other. How can intelligent and seemingly rational people see the opposing group as the pure embodiment of evil? Jung would explain this through the collective projection of the shadow. When a group identifies as the good ones, it automatically projects everything it considers evil onto the opposing group. Conservatives see in progressives everything they reject in themselves, and vice versa. The religious project their own questions of faith onto atheists. Atheists project their own need for transcendence onto the religious. Jung saw this happen on a devastating scale in Nazi Germany. All the evil of humanity was projected onto the Jews, allowing normal people to participate in unimaginable atrocities. They didn't see themselves as evil, they saw themselves as fighting evil. In today's digital world, this dynamic is amplified. Algorithms show us only content that confirms our beliefs, creating echo chambers where our group identity is strengthened through the demonization of the other. Jung warned that the prime cause of evil in the world is the unconsciousness of good people. But there is also an individual way out. When you stop seeing politics, religion, or any controversial issue as a battle between good and evil, and start asking, what aspect of myself am I rejecting in this position? Something magical happens. You move from polarization to integration. For example, if you are a very disciplined person and get deeply irritated by people you consider lazy, you might discover in your shadow a part that needs rest, spontaneity, permission to not produce constantly. By integrating this part, you become more compassionate and, paradoxically, more effective in your own choices. Jung had a phrase that haunted many of his patients. The person who cannot face their own shadow is completely and invariably at its mercy. But how exactly does one face their shadow? First, let's be honest about what this involves. Confronting your shadow is not a comfortable process. It's like descending into a mental basement you've spent your whole life avoiding. It's recognizing that you are capable of thoughts, feelings, and impulses you've always considered unacceptable. Jung called this process the dark night of the soul, a period where your illusions about yourself crumble. You realize you're not as good, pure, or evolved as you'd like to believe. And this initially is devastating to the ego. Let's take a concrete example. Imagine a woman who has always seen herself as a perfect mother, completely devoted to her children. One day, in a moment of total exhaustion, She catches herself thinking, I hate my life. I want to run away from here. This thought horrifies her because it completely challenges her identity. Jung would say that this moment, as terrifying as it is sacred. It is the first glimpse of the shadow revealing itself. The choice this woman has is to repress this thought back into the unconscious, where it will continue to operate as guilt and self-sabotage, or to acknowledge that it is part of the full human experience. The encounter with the shadow always begins with an uncomfortable recognition. I am capable of this too. When you can say this without destroying yourself, without becoming the thing you always rejected, but simply acknowledging your full human capacity, that's when true transformation begins. Jung observed that the most compassionate and wise people he knew were those who had faced their own darkness, not because they were evil, but because they had integrated their capacity for evil and therefore could consciously choose the good. The integration of the shadow does not mean unleashing all your repressed impulses and becoming a destructive person. Jung was not proposing psychological anarchy. He was proposing something much more sophisticated, the conscious transformation of shadow energy into personal power. Think of anger, one of the most commonly repressed emotions. A person who never accesses their anger may seem spiritualized and peaceful, but they often become a doormat, unable to set boundaries or defend their needs. Unintegrated anger turns into depression, resentment, and, ironically, periodic outbursts of disproportionate rage. But when you consciously integrate your anger, something extraordinary happens. You develop what Jung called the capacity to say no. You can establish healthy boundaries, defend your values, and protect those you love. Anger transforms into courage, assertiveness, and a sense of justice. Let's take another example, envy. In our society, admitting envy is almost a taboo. But Jung saw envy as a valuable emotional compass. When you feel envious of someone, that person is living a part of you that you haven't yet developed or haven't given yourself permission to express. If you feel envious of someone who has the courage to travel the world, your shadow may be carrying your own dreams of adventure that you repressed for the sake of responsibility. If you envy someone who speaks their truth without fear, it may be that your shadow carries your own need for authenticity. Integration happens when you stop judging envy as ugly and start using it as information. What does this person have that I would like to develop in myself? Jung discovered that every aspect of the shadow, when consciously integrated, became a source of power. Repressed vanity became healthy self-esteem. Denied selfishness transformed into necessary self-care. Rejected manipulation evolved into emotional intelligence and the ability to influence positively. The process is not simple, but the result is revolutionary. You stop wasting energy repressing parts of yourself and start using that energy to become a more complete and authentic person. Jung made a discovery that forever changed our understanding of dreams. They are not just random processing of the previous day's information. They are direct messages from the shadow, trying to show us aspects of ourselves that our conscious mind rejects. If you've ever had dreams where you behaved in ways completely different from your waking personality, where you were aggressive while being a peaceful person, or cowardly while being a brave one, Jung would say your shadow was trying to communicate. Nightmares, especially, are desperate attempts by the shadow to capture our attention. When you dream you're being chased by something terrifying, Jung would interpret this literally. You are running from an aspect of yourself that needs to be integrated. Let's take a practical example. A woman always dreamed she was being chased by a sinister and violent female figure. In therapy with Jung, she discovered she had completely repressed her own aggression to fit the social expectation of being a sweet woman. The dream figure was her aggression trying to be recognized and integrated. Jung taught his patients to dialogue with the figures in their dreams. Instead of running from the sinister woman, the patient learned to turn around in the dream and ask, "What do you want from me?" The answer that came was surprising. "I want you to stop letting people walk all over you." This technique, which Jung called active imagination, allows for direct communication with the shadow. You can practice this while awake too. When you feel an intense and unacceptable emotion, instead of repressing it, try to dialogue with it internally. Anger, "What are you trying to protect me from?" Or envy, "What are you trying to show me?" Dreams also reveal our projections. If you repeatedly dream of a specific person behaving badly, Jung would suggest you examine what quality in that person might be mirroring something in your own shadow. Jung had a brutal observation about relationships. Everything that we don't know about ourselves meets us in our fate. In other words, you keep attracting people who mirror the exact aspects of your shadow that you refuse to see. If you have a pattern of attracting emotionally unavailable partners, Jung would investigate what part of your own emotional availability you are rejecting. If you always end up with controlling people, the question would be, where in your life do you exert control in ways you don't want to admit? But Jung also discovered something liberating. When you integrate an aspect of your shadow, you automatically stop attracting people who manifest that aspect destructively. It's as if the universe no longer needs to teach you through external experiences because you've finally learned the lesson internally. Let's look at a real case Jung documented. A man always got involved with women he considered dramatic and emotionally unstable. He saw himself as rational and balanced and couldn't understand why he always ended up in these chaotic situations. In therapy, Jung helped him recognize that he had completely repressed his own emotional life. His rationality was actually an escape from his own emotions. He attracted dramatic women because he unconsciously needed someone to express the emotionality he denied in himself. When he began to consciously integrate his own feelings, to cry when he needed to cry, to express vulnerability, to acknowledge his own emotional needs, something magical happened. He stopped being attracted to emotionally unstable women and started connecting with women who had integrated both their rationality and their emotionality. Jung observed that the healthiest relationships happen between people who have made peace with their own shadows. When you aren't projecting rejected aspects of yourself onto the other person, you can truly see and love the person in front of you, not a distorted version created by your projections. Here is a discovery from Jung that goes against everything we normally think. Often, it's not failure we fear most, it's success. And this fear is directly related to our shadow. Think about it. When you imagine achieving your biggest dreams, what fears arise? What if I don't deserve it? What if I can't handle the responsibility? What if people find out I'm a fraud? These fears reveal aspects of the shadow related to personal power. Jung observed that many people unconsciously sabotage their own success because they carry deep-seated beliefs of unworthiness in their shadow. They were taught from childhood that standing out is showing off, that having ambitions is selfish, that shining is leaving others behind. Let's take a concrete example. A woman had exceptional talent for painting, but always found ways to sabotage her exhibitions. She would arrive late, forget to promote it, or create some personal drama just before important events. In therapy with Jung, she discovered that in her shadow, she carried a terror of being seen. She grew up in a family where she received the message that standing out was arrogance and that her value lay in being humble and not bothering anyone. Her shadow carried both her own greatness, which she considered unacceptable, and the fear of rejection that would come if she truly shone. Integration happened when she was able to recognize, I am afraid of my own greatness, and this fear is keeping me small. Jung helped her see that fully expressing her talent was not selfishness. It was a service to the world. Jung said that each person has a unique vocation, something only they can contribute to the world, but this contribution often requires us to face shadow aspects related to power, visibility, and responsibility. The fear of success also manifests in imposter syndrome. I don't deserve to be here is the voice of the shadow that carries all the times you were diminished or learned to diminish yourself. Integrating this part means recognizing both your own competence and your imperfect humanity, and discovering that both can coexist. Jung made a surprising discovery. Not everything in the shadow is negative. Often, we repress our most luminous aspects, our most powerful talents, our most exceptional qualities. He called this the golden shadow. Think about qualities you intensely admire in others, but would never allow yourself to have. Maybe it's the courage of someone who speaks their truth without fear of the consequences, or the wild creativity of a person who lives completely outside the box, or the infinite compassion of someone who loves without expecting anything in return. Jung would say that these qualities you project onto others as impossible for you are actually aspects of your own golden shadow. You repress them because you received messages that it was dangerous or inappropriate to possess them. Let's take an example. A man was always fascinated by charismatic people, natural leaders who could inspire others, but he saw himself as introverted and lacking presence. In therapy, Jung helped him discover that his own charisma had been repressed in childhood when he was ridiculed for trying to lead a game. The golden shadow also includes our natural creativity. Many people repress their creative impulse because they were criticized as children or because they learned that art is impractical or for lazy people. This repressed creativity doesn't disappear. It stays in the shadow, generating restlessness and a feeling of a colorless life. Jung observed that reclaiming the golden shadow is often more challenging than integrating negative aspects, because embracing our greatness requires responsibility. It requires us to leave the comfort zone of mediocrity and the protection that comes from not being anyone special. The process of reclaiming the golden shadow begins with an honest question. What qualities do I admire in others that I refuse to develop in myself? The resistance you feel to this question is proportional to the power these qualities have to transform your life. Jung said that our greatest contribution to the world comes precisely from the golden aspects of our shadow. They are the talents we repressed, the qualities we denied, the superpowers we learned to hide. Reclaiming them is not optional if we want to live a full and authentic life. Jung was not just a theorist. He developed practical techniques for what he called shadow work. I'm going to share the most powerful ones adapted for modern life. 1. The mirror of irritations. Every time someone deeply irritates you, stop and ask, what quality in this person do I have difficulty admitting in myself? It doesn't have to be identical. It could be a version, a potential, a capacity. Disproportionate irritation is always a sign of shadow projection. 2. The shadow journal. Every night before bed, write, today I rejected or denied this aspect of myself. It could be something small, like denying you were jealous, or big, like refusing to acknowledge your ambition. The goal is not to judge yourself, but to develop awareness. 3. The technique of opposites. If you strongly identify as an always positive person, dedicate 5 minutes a day to consciously expressing pessimism or irritation. If you see yourself as rational, dedicate time to exploring your emotions without trying to fix them. Jung believed that exercising our opposites makes us more integrated. 4. The internal dialogue. When you feel an unacceptable emotion, instead of repressing it, dialogue with it. Anger. Why did you show up now? What are you trying to protect me from? Envy. What are you trying to show me? Fear. What are you trying to warn me about? Treat these emotions as messengers, not as problems. 5. The meditation of total acceptance. Jung practiced a type of meditation where he consciously acknowledged all aspects of himself, including those he considered less noble. Sit in silence and mentally say, I am capable of kindness and cruelty. I am capable of generosity and selfishness. I am capable of courage and cowardice. The goal is not to become these things, but to recognize that you possess them as human potentials. 6. The what-if practice. When you catch yourself judging someone, try this. What if I were capable of doing the same thing? Under what circumstances could I act like that? This breaks the projection and develops compassion for both yourself and others. Remember, shadow work is not a weekend project. It is a lifelong process. Jung said that the more we integrate our shadow, the more we become who we truly are. Not an improved version of ourselves, but a more complete and authentic version. We've reached the end of a journey that Jung considered the most important in human life, the conscious encounter with our own shadow. What we've discovered throughout these chapters is not just psychological theory. It's a map to stop being a hostage to the patterns that sabotage our happiness. We saw that the shadow is not our enemy. It is the part of us that was rejected, repressed, denied, but that continues to operate behind the scenes of our lives. When we don't consciously acknowledge it, it controls us through self-sabotage, destructive projections, attraction to toxic relationships, and the inability to reach our full potential. But Jung showed us there is a way out. When we have the courage to descend into our own personal hell and acknowledge, yes, I am capable of this too, something magical happens. We stop wasting energy fighting parts of ourselves and start using that energy to become more integrated and authentic human beings. We live in an age of masks. Social media encourages us to show only our best version. The self-help culture often promises we can become only positive people. Society pressures us to hide anything that isn't perfect or acceptable, but Jung reminds us of a profound truth. Integration, not perfection, is the path to a full life. You don't need to become a flawless person. You need to become a whole person who consciously acknowledges and integrates all aspects of the human experience. This means you can stop exhausting yourself trying to be someone you're not. You can stop attracting situations and people that mirror exactly what you reject in yourself. You can stop sabotaging yourself at crucial moments because you've finally made peace with your own complexity. When you integrate your shadow, you don't become a worse person. You become a more compassionate, wiser, more powerful person. Because someone who recognizes their own capacity for darkness can consciously choose the light. Someone who embraces their imperfect humanity can genuinely love other imperfect human beings. Jung's message for our time is clear. Stop running from yourself. The aspect of you that you most fear facing may be the very one that, once integrated, will become your greatest source of power and authenticity. Your shadow is not a problem to be solved. It is a treasure to be discovered. Every intense irritation with other people is a treasure map pointing to aspects of yourself that need to be reclaimed. Every pattern of self-sabotage is a message from your psyche asking for integration. Jung spent his life proving that we don't have to be prisoners of our unconscious patterns. We can become conscious. We can choose. We can integrate. We can become who we truly are, not a sanitized, acceptable version, but a complete and authentic one. The work begins today. It begins the next time someone deeply irritates you. It begins the next time you catch yourself self-sabotaging. It begins the next time you dream of something that scares you. It begins when you stop asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" and start asking, "What part of me is this trying to show me?" Philosophy is not a set of dead words and old books. It is a weapon for life. What we've seen today about Jung's shadow is just one of the many tools we can use to sculpt an existence with more purpose and serenity. If this message resonated with you, and if you wish to continue on this journey of self-discovery and empowerment, do your part. Subscribe to the channel and join our community of thinkers. The next video may hold the key to your next great challenge. Remember, the courage to face your own shadow is what separates those who live an authentic life from those who spend their entire existence running from themselves. The choice is yours. The journey continues.